and welcome to this Astranti video on the top 10 most likely unseen issues for the February 2020 operational case study exam, focusing on our pre-seen company Lottie Graphite. Okay, so the aim of this video is to provide you with a bit of an insight, a bit of a guess, as it were, into some of the main topics or the main themes that may come up and may be tested in your upcoming OCS exam. I would like to reinforce at this point that there's obviously no way we can predict with certainty the topics that will come up in this exam, so this is very much just our best guess. And I would also say that this is not a comprehensive list of all the issues that may come up and may be relevant. There are things in the pre-scene that are of course testable, but don't unfortunately fit into this sort of top 10 issues that we have derived. So it's important to keep these facts in mind. So what is the basis for my choice of these issues? Well, this is firstly based on my reading of the pre-scene and my analysis of the information that is contained in the pre-scene. And this is then also used in conjunction with what I know about the OCS exam, past OCS exams, particular topics that commonly come up, particular themes here. So a balance between both these areas of knowledge have formed the basis of my choice for these top 10 issues. Okay, so breaking down my decision making in a little bit more detail. The first aspect of this was the focus that particular issues have within the pre-scene. So if an issue has a particular amount of space devoted to it, then what this really signifies to me and should signify to you is that the examiner has attached a degree of importance to this issue. CIMA uses the pre-scene as the basis for which to test you in your actual exam. So if there are specific issues mentioned in here, specific issues brought up, then this is likely to be some of the things that CIMA is looking to test going forward. The other thing that I've allowed to inform my choice when looking at the pre-scene is the strategic importance of particular issues. So we've undertaken a SWOT analysis as part of our strategic analysis in the previous video of this series. And so any issues that were particularly relevant, particularly important to this analysis of the business and therefore to the business's strategy going forward are issues that I've likely included in this video. And by considering things that are important to the company's strategy based on this analysis, I've also taken into account issues that are likely to be important in the eyes of the company's directors. So the final thing that's influenced my choice, as I've talked about, is my past experience working at OCS level. So as part of my role at Astranti, I've produced a number of mock exams for the past 5 or 6 sittings at OCS level. So I have a fairly good idea of some of the content that typically comes up in past exams, content that is regularly examined. And so this therefore gives me an insight into some of the typical issues that CIMA like to examine and how they may once again have hinted at these issues within the pre-scene and are therefore relevant for your revision within this video. Okay, so I know that we're dealing with a new syllabus here and that this knowledge and experience relates to the old syllabus. However, I do very much believe that it is still relevant in terms of identifying the type of questions that CIMA will like to test in this new exam. And the other thing to consider here from CIMA's perspective is how easy is it to write issues on a particular subject. So this is another consideration that I will take into account when making my choices here. In terms of how to prepare for these issues, how to utilize this video in your exam, there are a range of key things that you can do based on the information I provide here. So the first thing is to prepare key models that you have come across in your studies to date based on information within the pre-scene. So there are a range of key models throughout the CIMA syllabus for operational level, and what you can do essentially is apply some of these models to some of the issues that I pick out as part of this video. The key thing here is to remember to adapt all the models, all the content for any new points that you produce or that you come across in the unseen. You shouldn't go into the exam with a preset question or a preset answer in your head. You must be able to adapt your answers, to adapt your knowledge to specific requirements and specific situations that are provided in the unseen. The other thing you can do is to practice mock exams that cover these key topics. So at Astranti at OCS level, we produce full mock exams that you can purchase, and we try to ensure that the topics we cover in these exams are topics that are relevant to the top 10 issues that I'm highlighting here. So utilising these resources is a good way for you to practice writing mock questions under exam conditions on topics that may well come up in the exam. This video also then allows you to find relevant real-life examples that you can use in your exam. So the examiner really likes you to be able to demonstrate your wider knowledge about the industry in question. And what you can do if you are potentially aware of some of the issues that might come up in your exam is prepare a few sample paragraphs based on specific issues that are relevant to the top 10 issues that I have talked about. And then you can learn these real life industry example paragraphs and you can employ them as part of your actual answer in the exam. This video will also allow you to focus your revision on key points relating to key content. So for example, you may look at a particular costing or a particular budgeting model that may be relevant to this exam, and you may look through what are considered to be the key advantages and disadvantages of this model and learn these so that when you get into the exam, your knowledge on this particular topic is tip-top. And so you will therefore be able to obviously competently address any questions on these areas in the exam. And finally, this video should allow you to prepare somewhat in terms of the models that you may be able to utilize to support the relevant issue that could come up in your exam. So for instance, if there is a question on marketing, for instance, or the issue of marketing is one that may well be prevalent in this exam, then you can take some time to look at some of the key models surrounding marketing. Build up your knowledge in these areas, and then this will enable you to utilize these models more effectively to support your answers and your recommendations that you provide in the actual exam itself. Okay, so with that introduction out of the way, let's dive into the first of our 10 issues. So issue number 10, as you can see on screen, is manufacturing. Now, what I want to just clarify before we go any further is that these issues are not listed in terms of their priority or their importance. They're simply numbered to fit into the format of the video that we are presenting to you today. Okay, so don't read too much into the issue numbers at the top of the screen. Okay, so manufacturing, issue 10. What is the basis of my choosing this particular issue? Okay, so the first reason that I chose to highlight this issue is because it is such a crucial area of Lottie Graphite's overall operations. So we see this reflected in the pre-scene where we have 5 or 6 pages worth of information with regards to the company's actual manufacturing processes themselves. But it's also obviously evident when we think of the type of business that Lottie Graphite is, principally a manufacturing company, that this is going to be sort of a crucial area that CIMA are going to look to test you on. Okay, and then this choice is further strengthened when we think about the detail that we have in relation to the company's manufacturing operations in the pre-scene. So the first area here is the significant development of the company's production facilities that we are told about. So we now know that the company has invested heavily in its production facilities and has a highly automated, highly mechanized production operation in place. Okay, and then this contributes significantly to key critical success factors for the business in areas like the quantity of products they can produce and the quality of products they can produce. Okay, so the focus in terms of development that the company's production facilities have had in recent years, combined with the importance they play in terms of the company's overall strategy, again make them a key area to be examined for this particular exam. I think there are also interesting HR related questions we can ask in relation to manufacturing, principally the balance that the company has achieved between automation and the loss of staff. Okay, and so the existence of this sort of question mark, the existence of this issue hanging over the entirety of the pre-scene really, again, leads me to think that this is something that will be examined. And then finally, we talked about the level of detail we had in relation to the actual production processes of the business. And I think what we can really see here are some areas where there is inefficiency. So areas in relation to the mixing process, for instance. And also some areas where there is the potential for continued expansion to occur. So I'm principally thinking about the company's packaging department here, which is not yet fully automated. Okay, and so once again, the fact that there are some sort of areas of improvement that the company can make in its production processes. When we think about these ideas in relation to CIMA signposting content that they want to test at the exam, make me think again that manufacturing is going to be an important topic here. Okay, so now that we understand why I've selected this particular factor, I think the next thing that we can look at is some of the likely issues that we may come up against in terms of a question. Okay, so as we've talked about, there are a range of different areas that could be tested in relation to manufacturing, but a few issues that I think are relevant include things such as the automation of the packaging department. So this is the only area of the company's production operations at the moment that is not fully automated. Okay, and so we may see a scenario here where the business is looking at potential options or assessing options in relation to the automation of this stage of its production process in an attempt to improve things like efficiency and save a level of cost. And then you have sort of spin-off questions that could stem from this in relation to things like the HR impact of potentially having to make some staff in the packaging department redundant or move them to other areas of the business. Similarly, I think we could have a question on potentially identifying bottlenecks and addressing bottlenecks. So I'm sure if you've read through the pre-scene or if you've watched our pre-scene analysis, you'll see that there is the potential for bottlenecks to occur at several different parts of the production processes. So a question addressing these to again improve the efficiency and save costs as part of manufacturing, I think is another issue that could come up. In a similar-ish topic, I think there is also potential questions that we could see in terms of addressing particular areas of inefficiency within the business. So again, here I think back to things like the mixing stage of the process. How can the business overcome areas of its production process that take unnecessarily long time to complete, for instance, or that lead to a sort of inefficient usage of raw materials and an inefficient spend in terms of cost. Quality control is another crucial area that I think we could well see a question on. So we don't actually see much in terms of actual quality control processes that the business has in place in this particular pre-scene. So we know that quality is a crucial metric for the business, and we may therefore see a scenario where there has been complaints in relation to the quality of a particular batch of products, and you're asked to investigate and provide suggestions about how quality could be maintained and controlled within a particular area of the production process or throughout the production process more generally. And finally, we could have a question in relation to wastage here. So we know that things like raw materials, for instance, are a particularly expensive part of the production of these pencil products for Lottie Graphite. So we could have a situation here where we're having a particular issue with wastage in relation to things like spindles breaking. We know that these are particularly brittle and the cost that this is incurring for the business. And so this could maybe link into a question with relation to things like quality control. How can the business prevent this level of wastage occurring in future in its operations? But we could also have a question here in relation maybe to some of these the environmental and ethical issues associated with the business's production. How could the business reduce the wastage that it is producing and therefore operate in a more environmentally friendly and ethical manner? Okay, so in terms of key points that you must raise, I think there are a few of these that we've touched upon already, but I think we can see when we look at the pre-scene that there are various levels or various areas potentially for inefficiencies to occur within the production process. So principally here, the mixing stage, which I've talked about a little bit, it's very, very odd that you have a stage in production that could take the same amount of time and incur the same amount of costs for a batch of 1,000 pencils as it would do for a batch of 200,000 pencils. Okay, and so I think the inefficiencies in relation to this particular stage of production, but also some of the others that we talked about in our pre-scene analysis, are also points that could be sort of relevant. I think the question about staff roles and automation, I think, is a very important point that is very relevant to this topic. So we know that obviously the business is achieving levels of efficiency and cost savings due to its automation of production. But I think we can also raise points in terms of the sort of the staff supervision of machinery maybe, and also the roles that staff can play in the next point on this list here, which is quality control. Okay, so I think there are points that can be made in terms of balancing the benefits that automation and mechanisation provide to a business against the role that staff can potentially play in terms of overseeing and supervising the smooth running of this production process. And like I've just talked about here, I think quality control is another sort of key point that links into this area. But I think the key point that we need to raise whenever we talk about a question in relation to the manufacturing process of the company is the importance that quality has in terms of the company's end products and in terms of the company's brand in the eyes of consumers. So whenever we talk about a manufacturing process, I think we need to be asking the question, does it serve to enhance the quality that the company is producing in terms of its outputs, and what is there that we can do on top of the existing processes we already have to ensure that quality is at the level that it needs to be. Okay, and I think finally there are points that can be made in relation to potential areas of bottleneck that exist within the company's production process. And so sort of identifying these and pointing these out in your exam, I think, is a way to demonstrate your understanding of the company's production process, but also the importance of continuing to achieve efficiencies in this area and continuing to cut costs in this area as part of increasing the company's output of quality pencils. So I think here particular areas of bottleneck that are going to be relevant to talk about could be areas such as the painting process. I think you can see this in relation to some of the costing information in the pre-scene, but also some of the general information we get about this stage of production, with the fact that paint is added on in 7 different layers, but also the fact that this is done for individual pencils indicates that this may be an area that is slowing down production somewhat. And finally, thinking about key theory that you can use here. Okay, and unsurprisingly here we see a number of P1 topics. And given what we know about the dominance of P1 in this exam in terms of the core activities that you are going to be assessed against, we can see that this is a really useful area where you can deploy a large part of your P1 knowledge and gain marks in this regards. So we have total quality management, of course, as a potential theory that is relevant to this company. Is this the type of sort of quality management system or quality management technique that can be input to help maintain the overall quality standard of the company's products and prevent things like defunct products occurring as part of production processes? This very much fits in with the idea of quality control that we have talked about. I think the idea of throughput accounting is also very relevant here in terms of the identification of things like bottlenecks within a company's production operations. So again, understanding things like throughput accounting and the theory of constraints that sort of go hand in hand with this theory is another sort of important P topic that is going to relate to the issue of manufacturing. I think the value chain is, of course, maybe an E-based topic that we're looking at here in terms of the supply chain of the business. But I think it's a really useful model to understand in relation to the manufacturing processes of Lottie Graphite in terms of how the business adds value to its consumers via some of its primary activities. Okay, and then thinking about some of the decision-making content in the P1 syllabus, we can think of limiting factor analysis. So here we can think about this both in relation to single limiting factors, but also analysis of multiple limiting factors that a business may encounter in its production processes, using things like linear programming to overcome and identify these issues. I think things like discontinuation decisions actually are also potentially sort of smaller areas of the P1 syllabus, but also topics that I do believe will be relevant. Now, I'm principally thinking here about the number of products that Lottie Graphite manufactures and some of the quite obscure product types that it manufactures for quite small groups of consumers. And so theoretically, you could get a scenario in your exam where you're asked to essentially assess whether a particular pencil type, maybe something at the extreme end of the graphite grading scale, is actually worth the business continuing to produce going forward, or whether it is something that needs to be discontinued. Okay, so understanding some of the theory around a decision of this nature could be useful. And finally, of course, we have our break-even analysis. Now, this is, of course, a crucial topic at P1, really important topic, and could be used in a range of different scenarios in relation to a manufacturing-based question. So, for instance, the manufacturing of a new product type, for instance, or the manufacturing of a product type when one of its key raw materials has changed, which obviously then impacts some of the costs involved. Okay, so a range of different scenarios that could centre around break-even. Having watched this sample, would like to take the opportunity to draw your attention to a few of the other products that Astranti offer in relation to the case study exams. Now, the first of these is a study text, and this study text is available for all 3 of the CIMA case study levels. This study text contains comprehensive advice on how to pass the relevant level case study exam. This is advice ranging from tips on how the exams are actually marked and what you need to do to get these marks, all the way through to actually writing style and other key advice. These study texts are then supplemented by course videos, and again these course videos touch on some of the key ideas that you need to abide by, that you need to be aware of when looking to pass your case study exams. For individual sittings, we then produce pre-scene analysis videos. Now, these are a range of videos where an expert in the office dissects the pre-scene in minute detail, bringing out some of the key points that you need to be aware of, and really giving you a thorough understanding of the company for you to take into your exam. These pre-scene analysis videos are then supplemented by our industry analysis pack. Now, you'll be aware of this if you just watched our sample video, but essentially what this pack contains is an analysis on the industry behind the fictional case study company. So we look at the industry itself, competitors, things like that, really dig into detail here so you don't have to do this as part of your revision. And then crucially, we compare this to the case study company. So what we have here is a video that you've just seen a sample of, but the main thing we produce in this regard is a industry analysis document. On top of these products, we then produce mock exams. So there'll be a range of different mock exams for each case study sitting, and these are designed to be as real life as possible, as close to the real life exam as possible. So we provide not only a range of mock questions, but we also provide comprehensive, detailed model solutions, if you like. So you can compare your answers with the model solutions produced by our experts in-house. On top of this, you can then also choose to have the solutions that you create to our mock exams marked and then personalised feedback provided by CIMA qualified accountants. Now, on top of all these options, we also offer a comprehensive masterclass. And what this masterclass is really good for is those sorts of people who maybe have decided to study for the exam at the last minute, or those of you who just want a sort of comprehensive overview of everything that the exam will cover. And so these are comprehensive recordings which you can either watch live or which you can watch as recordings, covering everything you need to know about the exam. And finally, we do have a lot of confidence in the quality of our material. So if you purchase our full course pack, and if you don't pass your exam, unfortunately, using this pack, then we will offer you a pass guarantee. Essentially, we will provide you with free materials for the next course sitting. So all that's left for me to say is, once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and best of luck in your exam from everyone here at Astranti.